really think he can hear you, old man?" The voice was sharp, laced with the kind of bored arrogance that only youth can truly perfect. It cut through the reverent silence that hung over the manicured lawns of Arlington National Cemetery. Randall Oliver did not flinch. He remained kneeling, one hand resting on the top of the simple white headstone, his back straight despite the 83 years he carried. The name carved into the marble was as familiar to him as his own: Michael T. Callahan, a name that was once a boisterous laugh, a shared canteen of water, a desperate whisper in the dark. Now it was just a name on a stone. The kid, no older than 19, took a few steps closer. He held his phone up, though not obviously recording, the screen casting a pale artificial light on his face. He wore a designer hoodie and a smirk that seemed permanently affixed. "I mean, it's a nice gesture and all, I guess, but you're talking to a rock, just so you know." Randall finished his silent conversation with Michael. He ran his weathered fingers over the engraved date of death, a day that was burned into his memory with the heat of explosions and the chill of loss. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed himself to his feet. His joints protested with a series of dull clicks and pops, a private language of age and old injuries. He turned to face the boy, his eyes a pale clear blue that had seen jungles and deserts, parade grounds and hospital wards. They held no anger, only a quiet, bottomless weariness. "He can't hear me," Randall said, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. "I know that. I'm not talking, I'm listening." The boy's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by a flicker of confusion. He recovered quickly, doubling down on his condescending tone. "Listening? To what? The grass growing? Dude, come on. It's a bit much, don't you think? You're kind of holding up the scenery here. People are trying to take pictures." He gestured vaguely with his phone towards the distant Lincoln Memorial, as if the cemetery were merely a picturesque foreground for tourist snapshots. Randall's gaze didn't waver. He simply stood there, a pillar of calm in the face of a rising tide of disrespect. Other visitors in the section had begun to notice. A family with young children hushed their conversation, casting anxious glances. A woman in a black dress standing a few rows away paused in her own moment of grief, her brow furrowing with concern. The air grew thick with unspoken disapproval, but the boy seemed to feed on it, his casual cruelty escalating into a performance. "Look at this place," the kid continued, his voice getting louder. He kicked at a small, perfectly manicured tuft of grass at the edge of the grave plot. "All these stones, all lined up. It's like, okay, we get it. You were soldiers. Big deal. My uncle's in sales, and he travels way more than you guys ever did. You don't see us putting up 1,000 statues for him." Randall Oliver's hand, which had been hanging loosely at his side, drifted to the breast pocket of his simple tweed jacket. His fingers brushed against a small, solid object within. He didn't take it out. It was just a habit, a need to touch a piece of his past, a tangible link to the man buried beneath his feet. "This isn't about statues," Randall said, his voice still quiet, yet it seemed to cut through the boy's chatter. "This is about promises." "Promises?" The kid let out a short, derisive laugh. "What promises? That you'd come talk to his ghost every year. A little creepy, don't you think? You should be at home watching TV or something. Not out here LARPing as a war hero." He took another step closer, invading Randall's personal space. He lowered his voice into a conspiratorial whisper, a foul parody of intimacy. "Let me guess. You were a cook? A supply clerk? Pushing papers while the real heroes were out there doing the work." Every word was a small, sharp jab designed to provoke, to shatter the old man's composure. But Randall remained placid. It was a stillness he had learned long ago, in places where sudden movements could mean the difference between life and death. He had faced down men with rifles and grenades, men whose eyes burned with a hatred far hotter than this boy's casual disdain. The kid was an annoyance, a gnat buzzing in the solemn air of a cathedral. A small crowd was now overtly watching. Phones had emerged, and this time they were definitely recording. The scene was too compelling. The stoic elderly man in his Sunday best and the sneering, obnoxious youth, a perfect tableau of generational conflict. The boy noticed the new attention and swelled with it. His audience was growing. He pointed a finger at Randall's jacket. "What's that you're holding on to in there? Your war medals? Let's see 'em. Bet you bought them at a pawn shop. Bet you've got a whole story cooked up about how you single-handedly won the war." He gestured dramatically at the headstone. "Was he your best buddy? Did you hold him in your arms as he died? I've seen all the movies, Grandpa. Your stories are old news." Randall's fingers tightened around the object in his pocket. It was a Zippo lighter, its silver casing worn smooth by decades of handling. The hinge was loose, the flint wheel dull, but it was his most prized possession. The boy's words, meant to mock, had inadvertently struck a chord of truth. The world around Randall seemed to warp and fade for a heartbeat. The manicured green of Arlington dissolved into the muddy, suffocating darkness of a bunker in the Ashau Valley. The polite murmurs of the crowd were replaced by the rhythmic thump of helicopter blades and the frantic shouts of young men. Rain, thick and warm, plastered his hair to his forehead. He saw himself, a kid of 20, huddled over a map with Mike Callahan. The only light came from the small, stubborn flame of the Zippo, casting dancing shadows on their tense, grime-streaked faces. Mike had grinned, his teeth a flash of white in the gloom. "Don't lose that thing, Randy," he'd said. "It's the only working lighter in this whole damn jungle. It's lucky." The memory was so vivid, so complete, that Randall could almost smell the metallic tang of the rain and the damp earth. It lasted only a second, a flash echo from a lifetime ago, before the present snapped back into focus. The boy was still talking, his voice a grating buzz. "See, he's spaced out, probably forgot where he is. This is just sad." About 50 yards away, near a large oak tree, the woman in the black dress, Eleanor Vance, had seen enough. She was a retired Army colonel, here to visit her husband's grave. She recognized the look in Randall's eyes, not as senility but as the profound, unshakable focus of a soldier. She also recognized the boy's behavior as an intolerable desecration of hallowed ground. Her first instinct was to march over and verbally dismantle the young man with the full force of her command voice, but she knew that would only create a bigger scene, one that would further disrespect the quiet dignity of the place and the old man at its center. There was a better way. She turned and walked away briskly, pulling her phone from her purse. She had a different number, one she hadn't used in years, a direct line to the office of the regimental commander of the 3rd U.S. Infantry, the Old Guard, the unit responsible for Arlington National Cemetery. A young specialist answered, his voice crisp and professional. "Colonel Vance's office, how may I help you?" he said, a holdover from her time in service. "This is Colonel Eleanor Vance, retired," she said, her voice low and urgent. "I am at Arlington, Section 60. There is a civilian actively harassing an elderly visitor at a gravesite. The visitor is a veteran. The civilian's behavior is escalating, and he is causing a significant disturbance." "I understand, ma'am," the specialist replied. "We can dispatch a security patrol immediately." "No," Eleanor said firmly. "I don't think you understand. You don't need security. You need to send a sentinel, and you need to do it now." There was a pause on the other end of the line. A request for a Tomb Guard sentinel to intervene in a public disturbance was highly unusual, almost unheard of. "A sentinel, ma'am? Listen to me, son." Eleanor's voice took on the unmistakable edge of command. "The man being harassed is displaying a bearing I have not seen in a very long time. There is a profound disrespect occurring on sacred ground. This requires more than a security guard. It requires a statement. Get the sergeant of the guard on the line." Her insistence worked. A moment later, a deeper, more serious voice came on. "This is Sergeant First Class Miller, Sergeant of the Guard." "What is the situation, Colonel?" Eleanor quickly recounted the scene. The sneering boy, the stoic old man, the growing crowd. "The kid is mocking his service, Sergeant, right here, in Arlington. He's turning this place into a sideshow." "Can you describe the veteran, ma'am?" Sergeant Miller asked, his tone all business. "Elderly, over 80, I'd guess. Tweed jacket, gray hair. But his posture, it's perfect. He's standing there like a statue. He's holding something in his pocket, something he won't let go of." "Does he have any visible insignia, ma'am? Any pins, any medals?" Eleanor squinted, trying to get a better look from her vantage point. "It's hard to see. Wait, yes, on his lapel. It's very small, very faded. A simple blue pin, with a cluster of white stars." The line went completely silent for 3 full seconds. When Sergeant Miller spoke again, all traces of procedural calm were gone. His voice was tight with a stunning, almost explosive urgency. "Colonel, where did you say you were? Section 60? Near which plot?" Eleanor gave him the coordinates, reading the name on a nearby headstone. "Understood, Colonel," Miller said, his voice now imbued with a tone of awe. "Help is on the way. Do not engage. Just keep an eye on him. Keep Mr. Oliver safe." "Oliver?" Eleanor asked. "How did you know his name?" But the line was already dead. Inside the Tomb Guard quarters beneath the Memorial Amphitheater, Sergeant Miller slammed the phone down. He turned to a young sentinel who was meticulously preparing his uniform for the next changing of the guard. "Get the commander." Now, the young sentinel, accustomed to the rhythmic, monastic calm of the quarters, was startled by the sergeant's intensity. "Sergeant," did I stutter, specialist? Get the commander on the horn and pull every file we have on Medal of Honor recipient Randall Oliver. Go." The name hung in the air like a thunderclap. Randall Oliver. It was a name spoken only in hushed, reverent tones in this place. A name from the history books. A legend. The young sentinel's face went pale. He didn't just move, he flew. The entire atmosphere of the quarters shifted from quiet discipline to coiled electric tension. The sergeant of the guard was already grabbing his own dress coat, his movements sharp and precise. They weren't sending a security patrol. They were mobilizing an honor guard. Back at the grave, the cocky kid had reached the apex of his arrogance. He felt the eyes of the crowd on him, saw the phones pointed in his direction, and mistook their shock for admiration. He was the star of the show. He decided it was time for his grand finale. He scoffed dramatically. "You know what? I'm done with this. You're just a crazy old man. You probably don't even know the guy in the ground. You just come here for attention." He then committed his final, unforgivable act of desecration. He reached down and, with a flick of his